Welcome to the Plato Paradigm, a paradigm shift in reading Plato's dialogues. Episode 209, Lysis 206e to 207c. Last time, Socrates and Ctesippus, followed by the other friends of Ctesippus, entered the Palaestra, where Socrates immediately grasped the situation. The ceremony for the Hermaia had finished, and now many boys were playing knucklebones in the courtyard, but there were also a few boys playing knucklebones in the corner of the undressing room, and they were being watched by some boys and some youth. It might be pointed out that in opposition to Socrates, who observes everything, the boys already in the Palaestra didn't notice him coming in. They were too busy playing knucklebones or watching other boys playing knucklebones. Socrates is currently talking about the boys and youth watching the other boys playing knucklebones in the corner of the undressing room. Honde kai ho Lysis en, kai hesteke en tois paisite kai neaniskois estefanomenos, kai ten opsin diaferon, uto kalos enai monon axios acusai, al hoti kalos te kagagathos, of whom also was Lysis, and he stood among the boys and the youth, crowned and excelling in appearance. Not only his being handsome was he worth hearing about, but his being handsome and good, or fine and good. The problem here is that Socrates is using kalos in two different ways. The first time he describes Lysis as kalos, he does mean aesthetically handsome, beautiful, fine. The second time he uses kalos is in the phrase kalos te kagathos, fine and good, and this is an expression applied to any decent Athenian citizen. Lysis is only a boy, but it's obvious that he is from an aristocratic family. I'm not suggesting that all the fine and good in Athens were from aristocratic families, but a boy aged about 12 or 13 wouldn't look like someone fine and good unless he was from a wealthy family. We should ask ourselves why he is watching boys play knucklebones. Why is he with the youth, the older boys? I suggest that he finds playing knucklebones beneath him, and there isn't anything else he can do. He doesn't want to stand out too much. He's already excelling in appearance, so he simply stands in the crowd watching the boys. Until now, Socrates has been behaving as if he doesn't know who Lysis is, but he evidently does know who he is because he recognizes him immediately and apparently from the back. He doesn't see his face, and they are in the corner of the changing room. How does Socrates manage to see into a room from the entrance to the Palaestra? Well, let's carry on. I'm sure everything will become clearer as we read on. Kai hemes esto katantikru apochoresantes ekathezometha engar autothi hesuchia kai ti alelois dialegometha. And we, moving away to the opposite, sat down, for it was peaceful there, and we began to have a conversation between ourselves about something. This Palaestra seems to be quite a big place if they could find an area which was quiet, with all these boys rushing around playing knucklebones, Socrates is a bit vague about the position of the place which is opposite the corner of the dressing room. Does he mean the opposite corner in the dressing room, or the opposite corner of the palaestra altogether, which would be in the courtyard? As it happens, a little later on we'll find out that they are actually in the dressing room. Either everything is blindingly obvious and I'm just not getting it, or the person listening to Socrates' narrative is remarkably passive and doesn't bother to ask anything at all. We may infer so far from the content of what Socrates chooses to tell this person that he is very interested in handsome youth. Περιστρεφόμενος ουν ο Lysis, θαμά πεσκοπέτω εμάς, kai delos en epithumon proselthen. Anyway, Lysis was turning around and frequently looking at us, and he clearly wanted to approach. It isn't said how Lysis knew they were there in the first place, but we will have to assume that it's because Socrates and Ctesippus began a conversation, and he could hear them. We may infer that Lysis is more interested in conversation than in knucklebones, but it would seem that for a boy of his breeding, it isn't done to approach older men. Theos men un epore te kai okne monos prosienai, epeta ho Menexenus ectes aules metaxy paidzon eserchetai, kai hos eden emete kai ton ktesipon parakathizesomenos. For a while then he was at a loss and was hesitant to approach alone. Then Menexenus entered from the courtyard between playing, and as soon as he saw me and Ctesippus, he came in order to sit down next to us. Because Menexenus enters from the courtyard, now we know where Socrates and Ctesippus are. They are in the dressing room. Just out of interest, Menexenus only saw Socrates and Ctesippus once he had entered, which seems to be not quite the same as Socrates, who saw Lysis from the entrance to the palaestra. Alternatively, Socrates says that immediately he grasped what was happening in the courtyard, and then, and this is the bit which he doesn't say, and then they entered the dressing room where they saw the other group of boys with the boys and youth watching them. Idonun auton ho Lysis, hepeto kai sum pare kethezeto metatu Menexenu. So when Lysis saw him, he followed and sat down together with Menexenus. Pros elthon de kai hoi alloi, kai de kai ho ipothales, epede pleius heora hephistamenus, tutus epe lugusaminos proseste he meo eto katopsestai ton Lysin, de dios me auto aperthanoito, kai huto prosestos e croato. The others also approached, and Hippothales as well. When he saw quite a lot of people standing about, he hid himself with these and stood where he thought Lysis wouldn't be able to see him, fearing that he would be irritated by him. And standing in the vicinity thus, he listened. It's worth noting that this whole conversation has been set up to help Hippothales. At least that's the conceit of the dialogue. Plato himself could have begun the dialogue here, with Socrates talking to Menexenus and Lysis. But apparently it does matter that Hippothales is listening, and it also seems to matter that Socrates is going into some detail about how he got there, how the people were distributed, and so on, for the benefit of his listener, whoever that is. As usual, the description is not all that precise. When Socrates says the others came, who are these others? Everyone in the palaestra, or the people who were with Lysis on the other side of the dressing room, or the people who followed Socrates into the palaestra in the first place? They probably are. That's fairly certain. But I'm wondering how big this dressing room is, how many people could fit in and listen comfortably to what four people sitting on a bench are saying to each other. It is also not clear how the people are arranged on the bench. It's likely that Lysis and Menexenus are sitting between the two adults, but it isn't clear who would be sitting next to whom. Probably Menexenus is sitting next to Ctesippus because they are related, which would mean that Lysis is sitting next to Socrates. But if this is the case, then Socrates is talking past him to Menexenus. Kaigo proston Menexenon apoplepsas, o pai demo fontos, endego, poteros humon presbyteros, amphispe tumen, Ephe. And I, staring at Menexenus, said, O child of Demophon, which of you is older? We disagree, he said. Socrates knows the patronymic of Menexenus. He knows who his father is. So much for Socrates not being familiar with these people. Uk un kai hopoteros genaioteros eridzoitan, endego panuge Ephe. So also, which of you is more noble? There would be strife, I said. Absolutely, he said. Kai men hopoteros ge kalion hos autos, egelasaten un ampho. So which of you is more handsome? The case is the same. They both laughed. That is, both the boys. They both seem to be aware of their attractiveness. Presumably Hippothales is taking notes.